Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us on our weekly AJA Zoom event, and welcome to any new people that we might have this week. We also have people watching on Facebook, and there are those who listen to the audio replay, which is broadcast every Thursday at midday and Sundays at 4 p.m. on J-Air Community Radio. That's at FM 88 in Melbourne or j-air.com.au. So welcome to you all. My name is Alan Friedman. I'm Vice President of the Australian Jewish Association. On your screen, you'll see David Adler, who is President of the AJA, but he's going to disappear shortly because, as you can probably tell, he's not feeling all that well. Michael Bird is also with me, and Michael is going to help me a little later on. Our guest tonight is also visible. That's Sarit Zehavi from the Alma Centre. And the subject tonight is the Israel-Lebanon gas deal, the maritime deal. What we're going to do is have a presentation from Sarit and then follow it up with questions. As I always remind people, if you want to ask a question, what we ask you to do is raise your hand electronically. You can do that in the reactions icon at the bottom of the screen. That lets us know that you want to ask a question, and we put you in the line. We do sometimes take written questions on the chat function, but Robert Gregory, our Director of Public Affairs, is away tonight. He's on holidays, so he's not with us also. So it's basically just me. So if we don't get to a written question, then I'll apologise in advance. Now, after months of US brokered negotiations between Israel and Lebanon, a historic agreement between these two countries, which have technically been at war since Israel's creation in 1948, was finalised. We were told that the deal would strengthen Israel's security, inject billions into the economy, and ensure the stability of the northern border. This all sounds very nice, but we know that Iran-backed Hezbollah is running Lebanon, and it also has thousands of missiles pointed south. And what's worse than that, it's also sworn to Israel's destruction. One organisation well placed to comment on what happens in the northern part of Israel is the Alma Research and Education Centre, which is dedicated to researching the security challenges on Israel's northern borders and educating opinion makers, academics and others on the multidimensional complexities in the Middle East. We've previously enjoyed listening from its founder, Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zehavi, who served for 15 years in the Israeli Defence Forces, specialising in military intelligence. Sarit holds an MA in Middle East Studies from Ben Gurion University, and she joins us again tonight. Sarit, welcome back to the AJA, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Sarit, you're going to give us a little presentation to start with, so when you're ready, off you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. I'm very happy to be with you today. Henry, from my staff, if you can just present the map of the Maritime Border Agreement, I appreciate that. This will be very helpful for me to explain what just happened here in the past few months. So actually, what you see on the map is a demonstration of the agreement, and I want to explain. Lebanon is an enemy country. Lebanon, as you said, is run by Hezbollah. I like the term you used because the word control is a little bit tricky, and we can maybe discuss that later. And actually, in the past decade, there were negotiations between Lebanon and Israel to try to mark the maritime border. In the sea, it's just water. Nobody truly cared. Took a long time. The mediator was an American. But eventually something very important happened, and we understood that there may be gas in the region, which made everybody, both sides and the Americans as well, want to succeed in actually marking the border. The Israeli position around where the border should be was around line number 1. Henry, if you can show with the clicker where is line number 1 on my map. While the Lebanese position was around line 23. You can show line 23 now. Both positions were presented to the UN around 2010. And we couldn't agree. It was an area of dispute of around 800 square kilometers. The division or the disagreement derived from two things. First, there is a disagreement of where exactly the land border goes, where exactly the last place where the border was marked, whether it should be, and if those of you who visited and those who haven't, I will explain, whether it should be on top of the cliff. There is a cliff just at the seashore at Rosh Hanikra, where you can see in my map Rosh Hanikra, or below the cliff. If it's below the cliff, meaning that the cliff is included inside the Israeli territory, we have the advantage looking at all of the seashore of Israel, or almost all of the northern seashore of Israel and the Galilee. If it's on top of the cliff, meaning that actually the Lebanese are taking this access from us. Eventually, since there was no agreement of where exactly the point is marked at the zone, something that sounds really, really tactical on the land, and there was a disagreement of how exactly do we mark the border. There are few ways to calculate the angle, and you see that it's actually kind of a triangular with angles. How to calculate the angle from the seashore. Israel had one idea, the Lebanese had a different idea. Eventually, this is how this area of dispute was created. 2 years ago, something very important happened. Israel found gas, and you see a gas reservoir named Karish over there, quite a lot of gas, understanding that a lot of money at stake. Only a few months later, the Lebanese all of a sudden presented a new opinion, a new position that said that the border should actually be along line 29. You can see line 29 in my map, which is the southern line over here. Israel rejected completely this new position of the Lebanese. By the way, a new position that more than doubled the area of dispute, that is crossing into the Israeli gas reservoir, into Karish. And Israel rejected that completely. The Americans rejected that completely, putting a lot of pressure on the Lebanese president not to present his opinion in the negotiations and actually go back to its original position of line 23. At the same time, the Lebanese started to publish that there is also a gas field in the sea, as you can see, named Kana. And I want to clarify a few things around that. First, in opposed to Karish, where we have all the numbers and we have all the exploration from the zone of what's exactly in there and how much we can harvest, Kana is an enigma. We don't know exactly. There was no exploration in the zone. All claims of the Lebanese about the gas reservoir there is based on polls that were made by a French company named Total Energy Company, but we don't know, and Total doesn't know exactly how much gas is there. I want to say one word about the name Kana. The name was changed along the negotiation, and Kana is actually named after the village of Kana, Kfar Kana, which is a small town in South Lebanon. You can see the area next to the Israeli-Lebanese border in my map. Kfar Kana is a symbol in the Lebanese collective memory for a place that twice was attacked by Israel during the previous conflicts in 1996 and in 2006, while tens of Lebanese were killed in a collateral damage and two mistakes that we had in 96 and in 2006. After Hezbollah, the first time used UNIFIL, there was UN position there where civilians were hiding. Hezbollah was launching rockets from there, and eventually our shell fell on the people that were hiding in the UN shade. In 2006, it was a building that actually afterwards we learned that Hezbollah didn't enable the Lebanese that were hiding in the building to evacuate, and eventually about 30 of them were killed. So Kana is a symbol, and I think it's important to mention that because you said an historic agreement, and I a little bit resist that because historic agreement would be maybe understand as changing the whole relationship which is between Israel and Lebanon, and I'm not sure this is the case here. And when we speak about collective memory and how Lebanon wants to present and to frame the story, naming after this town, this gas reservoir, maybe it gives us a small hint of where exactly this is heading. Eventually, what happened in the past few months is that last May, a floating gas rig arrived to Karish, a gas rig of an energy company named Energian. It arrived and declared that it has a little bit of technique, things to close and preparations. And then in September 2022, they were supposed to start to harvest the gas as part of the agreement with the Israeli government. That moment, Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, presented a clear threat to Israel. Let's see if we will be able to see the video. Henry, can you post the video of Nasrallah threatening Israel? I would appreciate that. In a minute, you'll see exactly what Nasrallah said. And this is new, I must emphasize. The threats of Nasrallah in this video, Henry, if you can just put it. And are new because Nasrallah is threatening war against Israel, actually for the first time in 16 years. The previous conflict between Israel and Hezbollah was 16 years ago in 2006. In these 16 years, we had, I'm saying a relatively quiet border, but it's not completely quiet. We had a few tens of incidents on the border. Now we can see Nasrallah. Let's see what he's saying, and then I'll put the explanation.
إذا كان الخيار أن لا يساعد لبنان وهي الطريقة الطبيعية لمساعدته وإنه لبنان يدفع باتجاه الانهيار والجوع والناس تقتل بعضها، لا 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 لا، الحرب أشرف بكثير. التهديد بالحرب بل حتى الذهاب إلى الحرب أشرف بكثير، أعز بكثير. أقول للعدو في هذه الليلة ما يحسب غلط، ما يحسب غلط. والأمريكان وهوكشتاين ما تضحكوا على اللبنانيين وما تخدعوهم، اللبنانيون لن يخدعوا. إذا وصلت الأمور إلى الخواتيم السلبية نحن لن نقف فقط في وجه كاريش. هلأ سابت أيام تموز، سجلوا المعادلة الجديدة: كاريش وما بعد كاريش وما بعد ما بعد كاريش. إذا بدكم توصلوا لمعادلة أنه هذا البلد ممنوع يستنقذ حاله بحقه الطبيعي من الغاز والنفط، لن يستطيع أحد أن يستخرج غاز ونفط، ولن يستطيع أحد أن يبيع غاز ونفط. منيح؟
Okay, we can stop here.
مش هيك بيقولوا؟
And this wording of Nasrallah is highly unusual. As I've said, we had a few tens of incidents of rocket launching, of anti-tank missiles, of snipers, of mines, of drones. Things happened on this border in the past 16 years, but a threat, a clear threat of the leader of Hezbollah in going to war for this specific issue on the Israeli-Lebanese border, this is something that we haven't seen in the past 16 years. And to make sure that we understood the message, Hezbollah also launched 4 drones against this Karish gas rig, and IDF succeeded to intercept these 4 drones. But we all understood, by the way, unarmed drones. We all understood the message. These were 4 unarmed drones against a gas rig that didn't start to harvest the gas yet. That moment, the negotiations were renewed and accelerated with the mediation of Hochstein, which is the American mediator. While what happened eventually, Henry, if you can bring back the map again, is that like few days before the elections in Israel and few days before the president of Lebanon ended his term, and actually there is no sovereign today in Lebanon, the government is an interim government after the Lebanese failed to establish a new government since the last elections last May. And there is no president because they failed to choose a new president after Aoun ended his term in October 31st. In Israel, it's an interim government, I guess you all know. And these 2 interim governments signed an agreement that actually, due to this agreement, Israel compromised, Israel made a concession. To say that Israel compromised, from the Israeli point of view, it's inaccurate. Of course, from the Lebanese point of view, they made a compromise because eventually the borderline as presented to the UN, as was signed in the agreement around 2 weeks ago, is line 23. So imagine a situation, Alan, that you offer me to sell me a koala bear for, I don't know if it's legal, but let's walk with the example, to sell me a koala bear for, I don't know, $200. And I will come and I will tell you, oh, no, I'm paying just $100. And you say, you know what? I'm going to charge you $400 for the koala bear. And then I say, you know what? Okay, I'll pay the $200. And you get your $200 that you wanted from the first place. And I think this is actually what happened. The Lebanese got the line that they wanted from the first place, which is line 23. And they got the 800 square kilometers that they wanted. And now let's speak about the small details because small details are important. As I've said, there is a cliff there. Security is important. We are dealing with Hezbollah on the other side. And for Israel, it was highly important to preserve the 5 kilometers from the seashore onwards into Lebanon along the Israeli position, along line 1. And you see in my map, there is a small area which is still in green. Because due to the agreement, this area, as a status quo, not as a recognized border, will stay in the hands of Israel. We call it the buoy lines because when I'll take you there and you come to Israel, you will see there is a line of buoy that Israel put years ago after we had withdrawn from Lebanon. So that's one thing that is important. Why is that important? Because these 5 kilometers were not recognized as a borderline, and Nasrallah already after this speech, after another speech that was made after the agreement was signed, already said these 5 kilometers are an occupied territory of Lebanon. Another thing is the sharing of the gas. As you can see in the map, 17% of Kana gas reservoir is inside Israel due to the agreement, okay? The part that in the all disputed area between line 1 and line 23 is Lebanese. We recognize that. We actually made a concession. We gave up. But there is an area that due to the agreement is south to line 23, and it's actually inside Israel. Due to the agreement, Israel will sign a separate agreement with the energy company named Total, the French company, that is harvesting the gas from Kana for compensation upon the gas that may or may not be in this area of 70% of the gas field. Nobody knows how much gas is there, and that's why there is no agreement yet. So that's practically what was signed. Now, what's the advantages and disadvantages of all of that? So yes, we may actually gave the Lebanese what they wanted a decade ago. We may give up the gas that is inside this triangular between line 1 and line 23. But we didn't give up security in a sense that IDF and Navy continues to patrol at the same areas that it used to patrol before the agreements, these 5 kilometers that I've mentioned. There is no linkage between the maritime border agreement and the land, which is still a dispute in the land, and that way we can preserve our control on top of the cliff. It's not recognized, but we are there, it's a fact. These are the advantages, and of course we can harvest the gas, which is of course a very important message when we speak about merchandise and energy companies that are coming to the region and we are making business with them. They don't want to be intimidated by a terrorist group that have the access, as you saw in the video, to target all our gas rigs, bad, further south to Karish. Did we prevent war? I live up north. Right after the agreement was signed, I live 11 kilometers from the Lebanese border. Right after the agreement was signed, I received a phone call from one of the foreign reporters here in Israel, and he asked me, Sarit, are you happy? We're not going to have war now. Well, I'm happy. We're not going to have war now, but we didn't completely prevent the war. We actually postponed the war. We bought more time. We don't know exactly whether Nasrallah, and this is the biggest disadvantage, whether Nasrallah, what Nasrallah will take out of that. What Hezbollah understood from the signing of this specific agreement in this timing, right after he threatened us with war. What, Israel surrounded to the threats of Nasrallah? You understand now that it was not only because of the threats of Nasrallah. It was also because of the very unique political situation that was created and a lot of pressure, and because we wanted to start to harvest the gas in Karish. By the way, we didn't start in September as planned. We started only after the agreement was signed. So you understand that all of that together kind of created a situation, I can say, of no choice. We didn't want war. But what will happen next time? What if Nasrallah now learned the lesson and will threaten war on other issues, more issues, the land border, whatever, I don't know. What will happen then? Is Nasrallah willing to go to war? And I think this is the biggest question. Henry, you can take off the map now and stop the share screen. This is, I think, the biggest question that I want to leave it open for a moment, of whether Nasrallah truly meant business, and is he willing, is something changed in the conception? Maybe I should put it this way, because in the past 16 years since the war, all experts to Lebanon and to security on the Israeli northern border agreed that Hezbollah is not interested in war because of what is happening inside Lebanon, the economic and political crisis there, because the civil war in Syria and the fact that Hezbollah was deeply involved in the civil war in Syria, because of COVID, because of the criticism inside Lebanon against Hezbollah. All of that together made us evaluate that Hezbollah is not interested in war. But actually, after these words of Nasrallah, combined with what I see every day on the borderline, and guys, what I see every day on the borderline is Hezbollah, and I didn't see them a year ago. I see them 80 meters from me. I see their positions. I see them taking photos of me. I see them taking photos of the IDF, looking at us with binoculars. They are deployed all over the borderline. They were completely prepared to war with their commando units and other infantry units that were deployed on the borderline. And the big question is, okay, now we took off the table the issue of the maritime border. Is it going to be a different issue now, a new issue now that Nasrallah is, it's a win-win. Either he'll get war, more money will enter into Israel, Lebanon will be destroyed in a way, but if he's interested in that, so he got what he wanted. Or there will be another concession by Israel, and Nasrallah will take the credit too, like he took the credit for the maritime border disputes. I think this is the disadvantage in that. And of course, it's all about evaluation. We don't know 100% where this is heading, and we need to wait and see. We need to wait and see for more of the wording and for more of the doing, whether we'll see less presence of Hezbollah next to the border, whether we'll see a different, wording coming from the leadership of Hezbollah, how stable Lebanon is going to be in this very chaotic situation that I see, just in the past week, the Lebanese army received assistance from France and from United States, and I don't remember another country. Everybody were willing to help the Lebanese army as if this is the answer to the political vacuum that was created in Lebanon. So I guess that now with all of that together, you have a little bit more information, and we can open this for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarit. Just before we do that, I'm just going to share a screen with you, and I'm going to do what David usually does, and that is tell you what's coming up. So, of course, as we always do, we ask you to support the AJA. We need your moral support, but we also need your tangible support. So if you would like to join as a member, that's only $25. Anything above and beyond that would be much appreciated. Now, I will tell you that we have formed a new arm of AJA called AJA Tzedakah. This is designed to combat anti-Semitism and some aspects of anti-Zionism, as well as promote Jewish culture and values. Now, this particular arm of AJA, AJA Tzedakah, is actually tax deductible. So all donations made to AJA Tzedakah will become tax deductible. So hopefully that will entice you to do a little more than you might otherwise do. The bank account details are there. I don't expect you to remember them. What I would ask you to do is send a note to the office of the AJA, and you can see the address there. Just let them know your name and so on, and they will forward you the bank account details, and we'd love you to make a tax-deductible donation. Next week, we've got something very interesting. We've got Jonathan Pollard, and I don't think he will need too much introduction to this audience. So we're going to talk to him on life after life, in other words, life after life imprisonment. And we're going to see what his life has been like, because it's been a rather unusual life. And he now lives in Israel. And in fact, he's just recently got married again after the passing of his former wife. So we're going to we'll have a chat to Jonathan next week. Okay, now we're going to go to some questions. Just before we do, I've got a couple that I want to ask Sarit. So when line 23 intersects the gas field as you've shown it, what happens? How does that work? Do they have to work out a sharing arrangement, or does Israel manage their little bit and Lebanon manages its larger bit? What happens?
Israel cannot harvest in the Lebanese gas field, which named Kana. The company that will harvest the gas that signed the agreement with the Lebanese government is Total, a French company. And there will be, and it's written in the agreement, that there will be a separate agreement with the company that is harvesting the gas for the Lebanese to compensate the state of Israel. This agreement was not engineered yet and was not signed yet because nobody knows how much gas is there. Total will have to make more exploration. In the media, many people spoke about the option that Total will sell part of the rights to other companies, which may be problematic for Israel. Maybe collaborate with Iran, maybe collaborate with Hezbollah, maybe Qatari company. I don't know. These are just the ideas that were on the media. And as far as I understand, in a separate agreement that was signed between the Israelis and the Americans, which was not published, the full agreement was not published, there should be guarantees of the Americans to Israel to make sure that Total will not sell the rights to any company which may be problematic with regard to supporting terror. Whether it will work out, we'll wait and see, I hope. The Middle East, you know.
And of course, a company like Total must understand that this is a high-risk part of the world. So presumably they've factored all that in and they're still prepared to go ahead with it.
Yes, that's why they didn't start to explore at the zone. It's all based on polls because they didn't want to do it while there is no agreement.
Yeah, and if there is a war, then I imagine these gas fields become a target, I imagine, don't they? I mean, once they get bombed, they're just going to be burning for a long, long time.
This was one of the things that many Israelis said, that it's an advantage to Israel because it kind of creates an equation that there is gas rig in Lebanon and gas rigs in Israel. And that way, if Hezbollah will threaten our gas rigs, we can target the Lebanese gas rig, and Hezbollah will be deterred from doing so and endangering the energy market, not only of Israel, but also of Lebanon. I must say that I was not convinced by that because eventually it's a terror group. And if it will, as I've said, if Hezbollah will want to escalate the situation on the border between Lebanon and Israel for the Iranian reasons or for the Hezbollah reasons, it will happen. And I'm not sure that any gas rig in Lebanon will prevent it from doing so. But again, there are different views among Israeli experts around that.
Okay, if you're listening on J-Air, this is the Australian Jewish Association Zoom event, which we have every Wednesday night. And we're listening to Sarit Zehavi, a reserve lieutenant colonel in the IDF. She's from the Alma Centre, and we're talking about the gas deal between Israel and Lebanon. Okay, open line now. So I've got Terry, Ron, Reuven, Morris and Dennis. So Terry, you're first. Please unmute yourself and ask your question. You're still muted, Terry. Okay, no, you're still muted. Okay, we'll go to Ron, and Terry, you can have a play with your computer. Ron, please unmute yourself and ask your question. We might have a problem. Let's have a look.
Can you hear me now?
Now we're good. Now we're good.
Thank you very much, Sarit, for your interesting exposition of the problem. Well, there was some talk about President Biden writing a letter of guarantees. Do you know anything about that, what the guarantees are, and do you really take those guarantees seriously?
Ellen, I would appreciate if you can repeat that. I can hardly hear.
That was a bit, your signal's a bit weak, Ron. Do you want to, you were asking about President Biden and some guarantees, if that's correct. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and if there's guarantees which seem to be secret, whether Sarit would take those guarantees seriously.
Okay, you've got quite a lot of echo coming through. Sarit, Ron was asking, have the Americans provided any guarantees? And if they have, can we take them seriously?
The Americans provided guarantees, as I've said, especially around the issue of not enabling Total to sell the rights to companies that are involved in supporting terror, or that to a third party that supports terror. Whether I take these guarantees seriously, I'm an Israeli. On the one hand, of course, United States is our biggest ally. Iron Dome, interceptive missiles, half of them are manufactured in United States. We definitely need the assistance of United States in many aspects of security over here in Israel. So on the one hand, I do take these guarantees seriously. On the other hand, it's the Middle East, and we are neighboring Hezbollah and Iran, which are very good in bypassing different sorts of business agreements, sanctions, whatever. And that's why I think we should, go to sleep with one eye open and follow what's happening. And see, it's good that we have guarantees. It's good that the Americans were deeply involved in this agreement, that it's not just under the UN mediation. But we cannot, just forget about it. We should continue to follow and make sure that our interests are being met.
Terry, are you able to unmute? Yes, you are. Okay, ask your question. No, we can't hear you, Terry. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Terry, if you can write your question in the chat, I will be able to answer.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, let's go to Reuven. Reuven, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. When Israel withdrew from Lebanon, there was a guarantee given by America and the United Nations that from the Litani River down, it will be a demilitarized zone. That guarantee was never kept. Now Hezbollah are there threatening us with war. Wouldn't that be the first priority for Gaza to just get rid of Hezbollah?
First, it's not a demilitarized zone. It's an area that was supposed to be empty of any illegal weapon, meaning that the weapon of the Lebanese army and the weapon of the UN is legal in South Lebanon. And we have Lebanese army positions next to our border. And we have 10,000 UN soldiers that are based right next to our border. Up until the Litani River, it's a distance of about 20 kilometers. So that's one thing. Shouldn't we go first to Hezbollah? Is this your question?
If Hezbollah's gone.
If Hezbollah is gone, Hezbollah is not going anywhere. And to take off Hezbollah and defeat Hezbollah, it means a high cost for Israel. Maybe it will be done in the future, but we all know the price. And that's why, as I've said, the interest of Israel was to be prepared for war and to postpone the war. Because not only Hezbollah military assets will be destroyed, but also Hezbollah will, while fighting, Hezbollah will launch rockets to Israel, like thousands of rockets to Israel every day. And we're not going to destroy Hezbollah in half an hour. It will take a while. Hezbollah is hiding its ammunition inside the civilian infrastructure in Lebanon, meaning inside the homes or under the homes, using the Lebanese as human shields. My guess is that Hezbollah will use the UN forces as human shields as well in times of war and escalation. And that's why trying to completely take off Hezbollah means a lot of casualties on both sides. And nobody is interested in that with no very good reason.
Sarit, I mean, for a deal like this to function, it's going to rely on cooperation between the two sides. So that really means, I guess, the public service, the administrators. Do we understand that the Lebanese side will actually honour the agreement and behave appropriately?
First, again, it's difficult for me to talk about Lebanese side because, as you said, Lebanese side is actually Hezbollah. What do you mean by respect the agreement? Will they enable us to harvest the gas? We are harvesting the gas. Lebanese government, which Hezbollah is a member of it, is interested in harvesting its gas. So in this respect, okay, will Lebanese army navy ship will try to cross the border? They may. There was one report that they already tried. Will Hezbollah fishermen ships will try to cross the border and, you know, try to intimidate Israelis? They may, and we already had reports that they were trying to do so. We will have to continue to secure our borderline, regardless of the agreement.
Okay. Now, Morris, Morris is a young man you know, so Morris, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm unmuted, but I think Dennis was first.
No, you go. If you're unmuted, then you ask.
Okay. Shalom, Sarit. Great presentation as always. Sarit, I'm going to take a liberty and ask a question off topic. I'm sure everyone will find it interesting. Our friend Jeffy Jacoby sent me a photo of you with the deputy leader of the opposition, the Liberal Party, Susan Ley. I believe she spent a day with you and Alma a week or two back. What were her impressions of Israel's north, the border? And did she make any comments about her time in Israel and her time with Alma?
Yeah, actually, it was, first I must say a disclaimer. I don't know anything about Australian politics. Okay? I don't want to get into these issues. And that's why I'm very careful each time I meet politicians. I try not to publish that too much, not to be affiliated with any side. But having said that, it was really a fun day because I'm a woman and she's a woman and we connected. I felt that, you know, I can speak to her in a way that she can understand what's actually is going on here. I received a very good feedback from her. And I wished her good luck because she is a woman and I'm a woman. But again, I don't know anything about her position. I can say that I was highly criticizing in my words, not in front of her, but when I wrote in my newsletter, after your foreign affairs minister announced that Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel, I was highly criticizing that because I don't see how anybody can tell me what is my capital. And, you know, it happened at the same week that I took my children to Israel and we went underground below the Wailing Wall and we saw the original, you know, Wailing Wall that was built by Horus. And it was really a very exciting moment to see this 2,000 years and maybe more, 3,000 years of history going back to the first temple times, of archaeology and clear proofs of our presence there with the original Hebrew language as it is written in the Bible. How can anybody say West Jerusalem, not Jerusalem? No, it's not Tel Aviv. It's not Tel Aviv.
Yeah. That's a point of hot discussion here in this country too, Sarit, but we'll leave that for another time. Now I've got Dennis and Jason. So Dennis, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sarit, good evening and excellent presentation. I have one question. I would put it to you firstly, a deal is better than no deal, no matter where the line is drawn, because Lebanon has a lot to lose if they destroy the agreement, and they have a lot to gain by honouring the agreement, notwithstanding Hezbollah. That's point number one. I'd like you to respond to that. The other one is a bit more critical. Bibi has announced that he is against the deal as it currently stands. It looks like Bibi is going to be able to form government. What do you predict are going to be the actions of Bibi Netanyahu? Will he accept the deal as it is now that it has been signed and now that it has American support, or will he try to undermine it?
A deal is better than no deal, first because we postponed the war. I didn't want war. I live here up north. I don't want to be under fire, under the attacks of the thousands of Hezbollah's rockets. And we, as I've said, we got more time, which we don't know how much time. That's one thing. As for, and I'm not asking the question whether we could get a better deal or not. That's the deal. It was signed, and it's better than no deal. And as I've said, I'm not sure we had too much of a choice because of the political situation that was created on all sides. As for Bibi, if it's the same Bibi that we all knew from his previous terms, we can say many things about him, whether we support him or not. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he wants to, damage the Israeli-American relationship. And I do believe that he truly wanted to harvest the gas. It's the same Bibi that took the gas out of the sea a decade ago under a lot of criticism inside Israel from internal and economic issues about the agreement itself with the energy companies in Israel. So I don't think he will cancel the agreement.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. Okay, Jason and then Michael. Jason, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, so very quick question, if I may. The gas that's being harvested, how much of that is intended for the European Union countries? And if so, sorry, my apologies. If so, is that vested interest enough for them, enough incentive for them to tell Hezbollah to behave themselves?
Look, I'm not an expert to all the energy small issues. As far as I find out, and I ask the same question, is that the gas that will be produced and will be sent to Europe, from the European point of view, it will be a very small percent of the consumption of the European to gas. So it's not going to be a game changer with regard to the difficulties of Europe to provide gas in the next winter. For Israel, it's very important because it's a lot of money and it's new relationships, and it has a lot of meanings with regard to the whole constellation of the Mediterranean and how do we transfer the gas to Europe and what's the role of Turkey in all of that, or of Greece or Cyprus. And it's actually an opportunity for a lot of collaborations and opportunities, business opportunities in this. But if this will solve the problem of energy in Europe in the next future, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. Michael, fire away.
Yes, Sarit, just before I ask my question, you were talking about Susan Ley. I'm not sure if you're aware of her background. She was the head of Friends of Palestine, and she was a semi-Palestinian activist. So it'd be interesting to see if the meeting you've had with her maybe has changed her views. Let's hope so. What I wanted to ask you is, who's looking after, you mentioned the French company Total looking after the Lebanese side of the gas. Who's Israel working for? Which gas companies are going to be doing the work for Israel?
The name of the company is Energian. It's a Greek and British company. And as for Susan, I must explain something. Alma Center is not talking about the Palestinian issue unless we are asked. Our expertise is the North. And I'm doing that for two reasons. First, I live here, and I want to tell the story that is untold about what's going on here. And second, I believe that by speaking and briefing the delegations that I meet, and I meet tens of them each month, about the North, I give them a little bit of proximities, a little bit of proportion, and that way they understand that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not the only conflict in the Middle East. It's not the cause of all problems in the Middle East. There are many, many problems here in the Middle East that are derived from what Iran is doing, from radical Islam, whether it's Sunni of ISIS or Shiite of Iran, from terrorist groups like Hezbollah. And I hope that that way they get a little bit of more complex picture and colorful picture of what is happening here. So I'm not sure I changed their mind because we didn't discuss the Palestinian issue at all, but I can say that we got a different point of view.
Thank you.
Yeah, the reason, well, what we think is that she was very or somewhat anti-Israel because her family was involved in the diplomatic corps. She actually grew up in Dubai. So that's where she got her opinions from. But now that the UAE has signed the Abraham Accords, we've all wondered whether that's going to make any difference to the way she views the situation. She says that she's changed her mind, so we're watching her with great interest. Okay, let's go to Mike. I think we've got Mike. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Bochaba, Sarit. I just wanted to say there were a couple of good news in the last few days. There are some new gas fields that have been found. Can you place them where they are?
Need the map. Okay, in a minute we'll show the map. If we can jump to the next question until I see the map, and then I will explain where is the new well that was found.
Okay, while we're doing that, have we got any more questions? No. So if anybody wants to ask a question, now's the time. Sarit, it sounds like, I mean, when we read about gas fields, it sounds very big. It sounds like it's going to be a big boost to the Israeli economy. Is that sort of the right way, or do we perhaps make this bigger than it really is? Is it such a really big deal for Israel?
But the energy, the gas?
Yeah. Now we've got some feedback coming in from somewhere. Mike, that's better. Thanks.
I think that around 80% of the energy of Israel is provided by our energy, by the energy from these gas rigs that you see, and there are more. By the way, in my map, you see only up to Haifa area. There are more gas fields further south, across Tel Aviv and even further south than that. So yes, gas is an issue in Israel, and it gave a huge boost to our economy. Nobody can deny it. If I'm looking at the Israeli economy and the quality of life that we experience here and how we dealt with COVID, that all governments had to deal with, how to compensate businesses that are closed for months and months, the fact that we succeeded in preserving our quality of life and at the same time face the security challenges that we are facing, at the same time cope with COVID, I think that all of that is thanks for two industries that we have here in Israel. One is the energy, is the gas, and the other one is the startup that everybody speaks about. So definitely it's important. You ask about the new well. As far as I read, the new well is between Karish and Tanin, which is, you see the number 12 in my map. Henry, if you can point with the clicker between Karish and Tanin, there is a square of number 12 north to Tamar. This is where the new well was found, and it looks like for now, I don't know, maybe it will change the evaluations. The evaluation is that in this new well there is gas that can provide fully the needs of Israel for a year.
Sarit, much of the world, and certainly in this country, we're under assault by the Green parties to move away from gas, and in fact Australia has gas reserves, and they're not exploring them. Is there a Green movement in Israel that's advocating against developing these gas fields?
There is, but I don't think in a way that it actually creates an impact the same way as in Australia. In Israel, gas is preserved as greener than oil. So
yeah, well, it is.
I think Yeah, in the past decade, we moved our energy consumption to gas rather than the oil. And you can see, that's for sure, more and more green initiatives for solaric panels, for wind turbines. I see this on the Golan. We see the solaric panels in the Negev. So Israel is at the same time with the gas, which is very important, not neglecting the development of alternative energies.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got Leon, Bob, and Saul. So Leon, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Henry, you can take off the map.
Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, does the presence of these maritime gas fields possibly indicate that there may also be petroleum in the region? Are they associated in other parts of the world? Gas and oil?
I don't know. This is a professional question about gas and oil, which I cannot answer.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yes, it probably needs an expert to answer that. Bob, your turn. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sarit, just a question about the new findings. So all of a sudden, the increase of gas fields, can Egypt cope with the production now that all of a sudden the volumes are huge? Is there any other country prepared to help? Is it Cyprus? Is it Greece? What are the options? There wouldn't be in Israel a plant to process the gas, would it?
To help what, Lebanon?
No, Israeli gas. So it all gets shipped to Egypt. They have to liquefy it. Have they got the production capacity to deal with such a huge quantity?
Again, I don't know. I'm not an expert to the Egyptian capabilities in this. As far as I know, it is working. It is happening. Not all the Israeli gas is going to Egypt. Some of it is going to Egypt. Some of it, by the way, there is a plan of the Americans when they saw there is lack of energy inside Lebanon to create a project of a pipeline that will go all the way from Egypt through Jordan, Syria, and then Lebanon. This project is now stuck because American sanctions against Syria, but you understand that if it will happen eventually, the situation may be that Israeli gas will end up in the Lebanese hands to help the Lebanese with their crisis of energy.
What about the suggested pipeline between Israel, Cyprus, Greece, and Europe?
This is something that is now being discussed, whether it should be through Greece or through Turkey. I think this is one of the reasons that Erdogan decided to renew the relationship with Israel, because he didn't want to give up on the pipeline that goes to Europe.
Okay, thanks, Sarit. So Sarit, when gas is harvested right now, are there any pipelines to take it anywhere, or is it, as Bob says, it goes to Egypt and to get processed? What happens to the gas?
I'm not an expert for all the infrastructure. I can tell you that in Israel, yes, there is an infrastructure of gas to provide it to Israelis. It was planted about a decade ago, almost all over Israel, a decade and a little bit less than that, almost all over Israel. We are based on the gas.
Okay, I think we've got Saul ready. So Saul, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarit, for a most interesting presentation. Very well, something that really made things understandable. Could I ask you this? Some people in Australia regarded this as the beginning of a kind of an Abraham Accord between Israel and Lebanon. Others said, no, that's just nonsense. What it is Israel made an agreement with the United States about gas. Lebanon made an agreement with the United States about gas. The two agreements are the same. Israel and Lebanon are as far apart diplomatically as they have ever been. Which is the more likely scenario?
First, of course, it depends who you ask. There are different views among experts. My point of view, that it didn't change anything in the relationship between Israel and Lebanon, because Hezbollah doesn't acknowledge Israel's existence. Hezbollah is not saying the word Israel, it's saying the Zionist entity. I'll give you an example of a few years ago when a teacher in the classroom in elementary school in South Lebanon wanted to present the students, the neighbors of Lebanon, and she wrote the word Israel, she was fired afterwards. So, and she didn't write the word Palestine. She should have written the word Palestine instead. So I don't think that it changes anything. It's not a recognition of the state of Israel, and it's definitely not going to the Abraham Accords as long as Hezbollah is the one who is running the business in Lebanon.
Okay, I think we're coming up to time. I'm just going to ask Sarit to stop sharing her screen. Just before
stop sharing the screen.
That's it. Thank you. Sarit, just before we finish up, we heard a lot about the tunnels that were coming into Israel. That seems to have gone quiet. What's the story there? Is that still happening, or are we just, or have they actually? Has the situation changed?
Since the tunnels were found, 6 tunnels were found by the IDF almost 3 years ago along the Israeli-Lebanese border crossing tunnels into Israel, almost fully equipped with electricity, air condition, communication lines and stairs. I can't say that there are more, nobody knows actually. What we can say is that the IDF is monitoring that. And I guess that if they will have accurate enough information of more tunnels, they will do what they need to do to block them. But it became, for now, it's not the issue. We do see IDF building a wall along the Israeli-Lebanese border. The process is promoting as we speak. Every day, more and more areas are being walled. I think that for today, it's a little bit more than 20% that is walled out of a border of more than 100 kilometers. The reason that IDF is building a wall is because Hezbollah has an operational plan to send brigades to enter into Israel with commando units. That's why I was worried when I saw the commando units on the borderline. Whenever they will get the order and to enter into Israel, to try to kill Israelis in communities or in IDF positions, they could come below the ground with the tunnels, but they can also try to cross above the ground, and that's why IDF is building a wall now.
Okay. All right. We've come to time. I'll just, in thanking you, Sarit, I will mention to people that the AJA is planning a mission to Israel next year. And Sarit, you have been discussed because we want to try and arrange to meet with you and have a look at what some of the work that you've been doing. So we're speaking with the planners to incorporate a visit to the Alma Centre when we get to Israel. So that will be very exciting. We look forward to meeting you, hopefully. But thank you very much for your time tonight. It's a fascinating subject, and you've explained it very well. If people want to read a little bit more about it, what's the website for the Alma Centre?
It's israel-alma.org. You're invited to search for it and to join us, to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and to follow us on social media as well.
Okay, if people want to Google it, it's best to Google Alma Research and Education Centre, because there's a lot of things with Alma around the world. So by all means, Google.
My daughter.
So Google the Alma Research and Education Centre. Sarit, thank you again, and we wish you all the best. That's all we have for tonight. Don't forget the L'chaim program with Morris Klein is on right now. That's at 3ZZZ FM 92.3 or 3ZZZ.com.au. That's all we have for tonight. Don't forget to join us next week when our special guest is Jonathan Pollard. You can keep up to date with what the AJA is talking about on our Facebook page. Please like it and share it widely. But for now, we wish you all a very good evening and look forward to seeing you next week as usual. From me, it's good night to you all. Bye for now.